6 months had passed since the announcement. The galaxy was still adjusting to the truth, but life continued as it always did. Ships traveled between worlds. Trade flowed through the stations. Beings of all species went about their daily lives, but something had changed. Something important. Tay noticed it in small ways at first. The way other aliens looked at humans. The way they spoke to them. Before, there had been a hint of condescension, a gentle dismissal. Humans were the newcomers, after all. The children who'd just learned to walk among the stars. That was gone now. In its place was something else. Curiosity, respect, and sometimes wonder. Tay walked through the halls of the Galactic Heritage Museum. It was the same museum where everything had started 6 months ago. But it looked different now. An entire wing had been dedicated to human history. The real history. The ancient history. Visitors from across the galaxy came to see the exhibits. They stared at the artifacts with wide eyes. Old swords. Ancient books. Pieces of technology that scientists were still trying to understand. And at the center of it all, in a place of honor, sat 2 swords side by side, the blade of First Light and Yuna's sword. The sign between them told the story. How one sword had been found on a dead world at the edge of the galaxy. How the other had been kept safe by a single family for 15,000 years. How a casual comment from a young diplomat had revealed the truth about human history. Tay smiled at the display. His grandmother had been very pleased when she heard about it. She had said that the sword had finally found its purpose. It was no longer just a family treasure. It was a symbol, a reminder that memory could survive anything. "Excuse me," said a voice behind him. Tay turned to see a young alien. She was small and green, with large eyes and thin limbs. She could not have been more than 10 years old by her species standards. A child. "Yes?" Tay said kindly. "Are you the human from the story?" The child asked. "The one who remembered the sword?" Tay nodded. "Yes, that is me." The child's eyes grew even wider. "My teacher says humans are the first travelers. She says you are older than anyone. Is that true?" "It is true," Tay said. "A very long time ago, my ancestors traveled to stars. But then something bad happened, and they forgot. They had to start over." "That is sad," the child said. "But also amazing. You came back. After all that time, you came back." Tay smiled. "We did. Humans are stubborn. We do not give up easily." The child's mother appeared, a taller version of the same green-skinned species. She looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry if she bothered you." Children ask so many questions. "It is no bother," Tay assured her. "Questions are how we learn." The mother hesitated for a moment, then spoke softly. "I wanted to thank you for what your people shared with us." "Thank me? For what?" "The knowledge in the swords," she said. "The old technology. Scientists have been studying it for months. They say some of the information will help us solve problems we have struggled with for centuries. Medical problems. Energy problems. Your ancestors knew things that we have never discovered on our own." Tay had heard about this. The swords were not just memory devices. They contained practical knowledge, engineering designs, scientific formulas, medical techniques, information that have been waiting 15,000 years to be useful again. "We are happy to share it," Tay said. "Knowledge should belong to everyone." The mother bowed respectfully and led her child away. Tay watched them go, feeling a warmth in his chest. This was happening everywhere. Humans were no longer just newcomers. They were teachers, advisors, partners. The ancient knowledge they had carried was helping species across the galaxy. And in return, those species were helping humans understand their own forgotten past. It was a fair exchange. A good exchange. Tay's communicator beeped. He looked at the screen and saw a message from Earth, from Korea, from his grandmother. "Come home," the message said. "There is something I need to show you. Something important." Tay felt a flutter of nervousness in his stomach. What else could there be? What other secrets had his grandmother kept? The journey to Earth took 3 days. Tay spent most of that time thinking, wondering, worrying. His grandmother was old. Very old. She had been carrying secrets for her entire life. What if this was the last one? What if she was ready to pass the final burden to him? When he arrived at her house, he found her in the garden. She was planting flowers, her old hands covered in dirt. She looked up when she heard him approach and smiled. "Grandson, you came quickly." "Your message worried me," Tay admitted. "Is everything okay?" Yuna laughed softly. "Everything is fine. I am not dying, if that is what you think. I have many more years left." She wiped her hands on a cloth and led him inside. The house looked the same as always. Simple, clean, full of memories. "Sit," Yuna said. "I will make tea." Tay sat and waited while his grandmother prepared the tea. It was a ritual he had known his entire life. The careful movements, the precise timing, the respect for tradition. When the tea was ready, Yuna sat across from him. She looked into his eyes for a long moment. "You have done well," she said. "You carried the truth to the stars. You made our ancestors proud." "I just said what I remembered," Tay said modestly. "That is exactly what you were supposed to do," Yuna replied. "That is what our family has always done. We remember. We wait. And when the time comes, we speak." She reached into her sleeve and pulled out something small. It was a ring, old and simple, made of the same bronze-colored metal as the sword. Symbols were carved into its surface. "This is for you," she said. "It has also been passed down through our family, but it was always kept separate from the sword. A backup, in case the sword was ever lost." Tay took the ring carefully. It was warm in his hand, as if it held some inner heat. "What does it do?" "The same as the sword," Yuna said. "It holds knowledge, but different knowledge. The sword contained history and science. The ring contains something else." "What?" Yuna smiled her mysterious smile. "Locations, maps, coordinates. The places where our ancestors sent their other children. The other worlds where humans might have survived." Tay felt his heart stop. "Other worlds? You mean there might be other human colonies out there? Still alive?" "Perhaps," Yuna said. "The ring was meant to help survivors find each other, to reunite the scattered pieces of our people. We never used it because we never had the ability to travel to the stars. But now we do." Tay stared at the ring in his hand. It felt heavier than it should. Heavier than any ring should feel. "You want me to search for them," he said. "The other survivors." Yuna nodded. "It is your choice. But I believe this is why our family kept the memories alive. Not just to remember the past, but to find the future. To bring our people back together." Tay looked at his grandmother. She was old and small and wrinkled, but in her eyes, he saw the strength of 15,000 years. The determination of countless generations who had refused to let their history die. "I will do it," he said. "I will find them." Yuna smiled and poured more tea. "Good. But first, drink, rest. You have a long journey ahead of you." Outside the window, the stars were beginning to appear in the evening sky. Tay looked at them and wondered which ones hid human colonies. Which ones held brothers and sisters he had never met? Which ones held pieces of humanity waiting to be found? The galaxy was vast. The search would take years, maybe decades, maybe his entire life. But humans were stubborn. They did not give up. They remembered. Tay put the ring on his finger. It fit perfectly. His grandmother was humming an old song, a song that had been passed down through generations, just like the sword, just like the book, just like the ring. Tay did not know the words, but he knew the melody. He had heard it all his life. He started humming to Dot in her small house in Korea. Surrounded by her garden and her memories, Yuna smiled at her grandson. The torch had been passed. The story would continue. And somewhere out there, among the countless stars, other humans might be humming the same song, waiting to be found, waiting to come home. The search would begin tomorrow. Tonight, there was tea and family and the ancient song of the first travelers. It was enough. For now, it was enough. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Every news channel on every world carried the story. Every species, from the oldest to the youngest, talked about only one thing. The humans. The beings who everyone thought were newcomers. The species that had only discovered space travel a century ago. The people who seemed so young and so primitive compared to the ancient civilizations of the Galactic Council. They were older than everyone. They had been traveling the stars before most current species had even evolved. And they had forgotten everything. Tay sat in a waiting room on the council's main station. His grandmother's sword and book had been taken for further study. Yuna herself had refused to leave Earth. She said she was too old for space travel and that her garden needed her attention. But she had given permission for scholars to come and speak with her. The door opened and Mira walked in. She looked tired but excited. Her blue skin seemed to glow with energy. "The translations are complete," she said, sitting down next to Tay. "We finally understand the old writing. What does it say?" Tay asked. Mira took a deep breath. "Your grandmother's book is a survival guide. It was written for the last generation of your ancient ancestors, the ones who were sent to Earth." "Sent? You mean we did not evolve here?" "You evolved here," Myra explained. "But your ancestors came from somewhere else. The book explains that a great disaster was coming. Your ancient people knew they could not survive it. So they sent small groups to remote planets across the galaxy. Earth was one of those places. They hoped that at least some groups would survive and rebuild." Tay felt a strange mix of emotions: pride, sadness, wonder. What happened to the other groups? Myra looked down. "We do not know yet. We have found evidence of human-like settlements on many dead worlds, including the world where the blade of first light was discovered. But so far, Earth is the only place where your people survived. We were the lucky ones," Tay said quietly. "More than lucky," Myra said. "Your ancestors were smart. They did not just send people. They sent knowledge. The swords were not just weapons. They were memory devices." Tay sat up straight. "What?" "The metal in the swords is very special. It can store information. Not like our computers, but in a different way. A way that can last for thousands of years. Each sword contains data about your ancestors, history, science, culture, everything that would be needed to rebuild civilization. But we never knew," Tay said. "We just thought they were old family treasures. The knowledge of how to read the swords was lost over time," Myra said. "Your family kept the writing alive, but the technology was forgotten. Until now." Tay thought about this. Somewhere in his grandmother's sword was all the knowledge of an ancient civilization. His civilization. His ancestors. And they had carried it for 15,000 years without even knowing. "There's more," Myra said. "We found records of the swords in our own archives. Not clear records, but hints, references. It seems that your ancestors were known to other species. They were called the first travelers, the Star Walkers, the ancient ones. But everyone thought those were myths," Tay said. "Legends about a species that existed before all others." Myra nodded. "They were not myths. They were memories. Memories of your people. The door opened again, and Vel walked in. His wings were calm now, but his eyes were still wide with amazement. The council wants to speak with you, human. With you specifically. With me? Why? Because you are the one who started this. The one who remembered. The council believes you should be there when we make the announcement. Tay stood up on shaky legs. What announcement? Vel's voice was solemn. We are going to tell the galaxy the truth. About humanity. About your ancestors. About everything. The council chamber was the largest room Tay had ever seen. It was built to hold representatives from thousands of species. Today, it was completely full. Beings of every shape and size sat in hovering chairs, stood on platforms, or floated in the air. All of them were looking at the center of the room. Tay stood there with Vel, Mira, and the other representatives who had been at the museum. Holographic screens showed his face to everyone in the room and to billions of viewers across the galaxy. Drath, the Metal Council Elder, spoke first. His voice echoed through the chamber. Citizens of the Galactic Council, we have gathered you today to share information that will change our understanding of history. For thousands of cycles, we believe we knew the order of things. We knew which species were old and which were young. We knew who came first and who came later. We were wrong. A murmur ran through the crowd. Drath raised his hand for silence. 2 years ago, we made contact with a species called humans. They came from a small planet at the edge of the galaxy. They had only recently developed space travel. We welcomed them as newcomers, as children, as the youngest members of our community. Drath paused. His metal face showed no emotion, but his voice was heavy with meaning. We now know that humans are not newcomers. They are not children. They are, in fact, the oldest known sentient species in the galaxy. Their ancestors traveled to stars before our species even existed. They built civilizations. They created technology. And then they fell. The chamber exploded with noise. Shouts and questions and sounds of disbelief came from every direction. It took several minutes for order to be restored. We have proof, Drath continued. Artifacts, records, a history that has been preserved by human families for 15,000 years. The full details will be released to all member species. But the conclusion is clear. Humans are the first travelers. The legendary civilization that we thought was only a myth. Neth, the Scaled Council member, stepped forward. This raises many questions. If humans were once so advanced, how did they fall so far? What happened to their technology? Their knowledge? Their power? Mira answered this question. The records are incomplete, but they speak of a great disaster. A war or a natural catastrophe. Something that destroyed almost everything. The survivors were scattered across the galaxy. Most died. A few survived on remote worlds. Earth was one of those worlds. But the survivors forgot, Vel added. Over thousands of years, they lost their technology. They lost their history. They became primitive. They had to start over from nothing. Liz floated forward. Her light body cast rainbow patterns across the floor. I have examined the memories of several humans since this discovery. I found something interesting. Many humans have dreams. Dreams of flying through stars. Dreams of strange worlds and ancient cities. These are not fantasies. They are genetic memories. Echoes of a past their conscious minds have forgotten. Tay felt a chill run down his spine. He had those dreams. He had always thought they were just his imagination. But what if they were real? What if some part of him remembered? Drath looked directly at Tay. Human, you are the descendant of the first travelers, the heir to the oldest civilization in the known galaxy. What do you say? Tay's mouth went dry. He had not prepared a speech. He had not expected to speak at all. But billions of beings were watching, waiting. He had to say something. "I am just a diplomat," he said slowly. "I am not a scientist or a historian. I do not know everything about my ancestors. But I know this. My grandmother taught me that memory is the most important thing. She said we must never forget where we come from. For 15,000 years, my family remembered. We did not know why. We did not know what we were remembering. But we held on. We kept the stories alive. We passed down the sword and the book, generation after generation." He looked around the chamber at the thousands of faces watching him. "Humans fell once. We lost everything. But we did not give up. We survived. We rebuilt. We learned to walk among the stars again. It took us 15,000 years, but we came back. And now we are here, standing beside you as equals." He straightened his shoulders and lifted his chin. "We are humans. We are the first travelers. We fell, but we rose again. And we will never forget that." The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, applause began. It started with Breck, the furry alien, clapping his 6 paws together. It spread to others. Soon the entire chamber was filled with the sound of thousands of beings applauding. Tay felt tears in his eyes. He thought of his grandmother, sitting in her small house, tending her garden. She had carried this secret her entire life. Her mother had carried it. Her grandmother. Back and back through time. Now the secret was out. And everything was different. The small village sat between green mountains and a quiet river. The houses were old and traditional, with curved roofs and wooden walls. Smoke rose from chimneys. Birds sang in the trees. It was peaceful, in a way, that the alien visitors had never experienced before. The research ship had landed in a field outside the village. It was a small ship, designed to be quiet and not frightening. The council had sent only 4 researchers, along with Vel as the official representative. Tay had come too, to introduce them to his grandmother. The walk to Yuna's house took 10 minutes. The villagers stared at the aliens with wide eyes, but no one ran away or screamed. Humans had known about alien life for 2 years now. They were getting used to the idea. "This planet is very green," Vel observed. His forearms hung at his sides as he walked. "So much plant life. Earth has many different environments," Tay explained. "This region is called Korea. It has 4 seasons. Right now it is spring." Myra had insisted on joining the research team. She walked beside Tay, her blue skin looking strange against the green landscape. "The air is so fresh here. So clean. The village is far from the cities," Tay said. "No factories. No pollution. My grandmother refused to move to a modern area. She said the old ways were better." They reached a small house at the edge of the village. It was older than the other houses, with a garden full of vegetables and flowers. A stone path led to the front door. Wind chimes made of metal and wood hung from the roof, making soft music in the breeze. Tay stopped at the gate. "Please wait here. Let me speak to her first." The aliens nodded. Tay walked up the stone path and knocked on the door. After a moment, it opened. Yuna was small and thin, with white hair pulled back in a simple style. Her face was covered in wrinkles, but her eyes were sharp and bright. She wore traditional Korean clothes in dark colors. She looked at Tay and smiled. "Grandson," she said in Korean, "you finally came to visit. It only took you 3 years." "I am sorry, grandmother," Tay said, bowing respectfully. "I have been very busy." "Busy with the star people," Yuna said. She looked past Tay at the aliens waiting at her gate. "And now you bring them to my home. They want to see the sword," Tay said. "The one you showed me when I was young." Yuna's smile faded slightly. Her eyes became thoughtful. "Ah, the sword. I wondered when this day would come. Tay felt confused. You were expecting this? Not exactly, Una said. But I knew that when humans went to the stars, old secrets would become new questions. Come, bring your friends inside. I will make tea. She turned and walked back into the house. Tay waved for the aliens to follow. The inside of the house was warm and simple. The floors were made of smooth wood. Paper screens divided the rooms. Old paintings hung on the walls. Everything was clean and carefully arranged. The aliens had to duck to fit through the doorways. Gorn, the rock-like being, could barely fit at all. He had to sit outside on the porch, looking through an open window. Una brought tea in small ceramic cups. She served each guest personally, even the aliens who could not drink human beverages. It was about respect, not about drinking. So, Una said, sitting down across from them, "You came a long way to see an old woman's treasure." Vel bowed his head politely. "Honored elder, we mean no disrespect. But your grandson said something that raised many questions. He said you have a sword that is very old. We would like to see it, if you are willing." Una looked at Vel for a long moment. Then she looked at each alien in turn. Finally, she looked at Tay. "Your friends have good manners," she said. "That is rare among powerful beings." She stood up slowly, her old joints making soft sounds. She walked to a wooden cabinet in the corner of the room. From inside, she took out a box made of dark wood. The box was old and worn, but carefully maintained. She carried it back to the center of the room and set it on the floor. Everyone leaned forward to watch. "This sword has been in my family since before memory," Una said. "My mother gave it to me. Her mother gave it to her. And so on, back through time. We do not know how far back. We only know that it has always been with us." She opened the box. Inside, resting on faded red silk, was a sword. It was short and curved, made of dark bronze-colored metal. The handle was wrapped in old leather. And on the blade, barely visible after so many years, were small symbols. Vel made a sound that might have been a gasp. Mira covered her mouth with her webbed hands. Even the researchers, who were supposed to be calm and scientific, stared with wide eyes. "It looks exactly like the blade of first light," one researcher whispered. "May we examine it?" Vel asked. His voice was shaking slightly. Una nodded. "You may look, but be gentle. It is old and precious." The researchers brought out their equipment. Scanners and sensors hummed as they studied the sword from every angle. They measured its weight, its composition, its age. They photographed the symbols on the blade. Tay watched his grandmother during all of this. She sat calmly, drinking her tea, as if aliens examining ancient artifacts in her living room was a normal Tuesday afternoon. "Grandmother," Tay said quietly, "you do not seem surprised by any of this." Una smiled her mysterious smile. "When you are as old as I am, very little surprises you. But the sword, you never told me how old it really is." "You never asked the right questions," Una said. "You were a child. Children ask about games and candy. They do not ask about the secrets of the universe." One of the researchers approached Una with great respect. "Honored elder, our scans are complete. The results are remarkable. How old is it?" Vel demanded, his wings buzzing. The researcher looked at the data on his device. His hands were trembling. "According to our analysis, this sword is approximately 15,000 years old." Earth years. The room became completely silent. 15,000 years. The blade of first light was only 12,000 galactic cycles old. Even accounting for differences in time measurement, Una's sword was older. Much older. "That is impossible," Vel said. But his voice was weak. He did not really believe his own words anymore. "There is more," the researcher said. "The symbols on the blade. We compared them to the symbols on the blade of first light. They are from the same language, the same writing system. The swords were made by the same people. Myra stood up so quickly that she knocked over her tea. The same people? But the blade of first light was found on the other side of the galaxy, on a dead world. No one knows who lived there. Una set down her cup. I can tell you who lived there. Everyone stared at her. We did, Una said simply. Humans, our ancestors. Long ago, before this world, before this life, we traveled among the stars. We built cities on 100 worlds. We created great things. And then something happened. A war, a disaster. I do not know what, but we fell. We forgot. We became simple creatures on a small planet, trying to survive. How do you know this? Tay asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Una reached into the box and pulled out something else. It was a small book, very old, with pages made of something that was not quite paper. The cover was plain and unmarked. This has also been passed down through our family, Una said. For generations we kept it safe. We taught our children to read the old writing. We remembered, even when everyone else forgot. She opened the book. Inside, written in the same symbols that decorated the sword, were words and pictures. Maps of stars. Diagrams of ships. Names of places that no longer existed. This is a history book, Una said. Our history. The true history of humanity. Val's legs nearly gave out beneath him. He had to grab the wall to stay standing. This changes everything. Everything we thought we knew about the galaxy. About your species. About our own history. Una closed the book gently. Now you understand why we kept it secret. The universe was not ready. Maybe it is still not ready. But secrets have a way of revealing themselves when the time comes. She looked at Tay with love and pride. You have started something important, grandson. Something that cannot be stopped. I hope you are ready for what comes next. Tay looked at the sword, at the book, and his grandmother. He thought about all the things he had learned today. His entire understanding of human history had changed in a single afternoon. And somehow, he knew this was only the beginning. The meeting room on the museum station was cold and bright. White lights shone down from the ceiling. A long table made of some kind of alien glass sat in the middle of the room. Around it sat the 5 alien representatives and Tay. 3 hours had passed since the incident in the Hall of Origins. Val had immediately called an emergency meeting. He had also called 3 more members of the Galactic Council to join them through holographic communication. Their blue-tinted images floated at the end of the table. Tay sat in his chair and tried not to look nervous. He had not expected his simple comment to cause such a big reaction. He was just making conversation. He was just saying what he remembered. Let us be clear about what happened, said one of the holographic council members. His name was Drath, and he was an old being made of living metal. His voice echoed strangely through the communication system. The human claims that his grandmother possesses a weapon similar to the blade of first light. Is this correct? That is what he said, Val confirmed. His wings were still buzzing with nervous energy. And Liz verified that he was speaking truthfully. Liz nodded her glowing head. The human believes what he says. His memories are genuine. Memories can be wrong, said another council member, a female creature with scales and sharp teeth. Her name was Neth. Humans are a young species. Their minds are not as reliable as ours. Tay felt a small flash of annoyance at this comment, but he kept his face calm. He was a diplomat. His job was to stay calm in difficult situations. With respect, Tay said carefully, I know what I saw. I spent many summers at my grandmother's house when I was a child. She showed me the sword many times. She told me stories about it. What kind of stories? Asked the third council member, a being that looked like a cloud of purple smoke. His name was unclear to Tay, but the translator called him something like Whisper. Tay leaned back in his chair and tried to remember. She said the sword was made by our ancestors. She said it was very, very old. Older than our country. Older than our language. She said it had been passed down through our family since the beginning of memory. The beginning of memory, Gorn repeated slowly. What does that mean exactly? I do not know, Tay admitted. My grandmother liked to speak in riddles sometimes. She was a bit mysterious. She always said there were secrets in our family that I would learn when I was older. And did you learn them? Mira asked. Tay shook his head. No, life became busy. I went to school. I joined the diplomatic service. I traveled to other countries. Then we made contact with the galaxy, and I was chosen to be a representative. I have not visited my grandmother in 3 years. Breck made a sad sound. 3 years is a long time to not see family. It is, Tay agreed. I miss her. Drath's metallic face showed no emotion. This is all very touching, but we need facts. Human, can you describe the sword in more detail? Tay closed his eyes and thought hard. The memory was old, but it was still there. He could see his grandmother's small room. He could smell the old wood and the tea she always made. He could see her wrinkled hands opening the box. The sword was short, he said slowly. Maybe this long? He held his hands about half a meter apart. The blade was curved a little. The metal was dark, like bronze that had aged for many years. The handle was wrapped in leather or some kind of skin. It was cracked and old. Val made a strange sound in his throat. That matches the blade of First Light almost perfectly. Almost? Neth asked sharply. The blade of First Light has markings on the blade, Val explained. Small symbols that we have never been able to translate. We do not know what language they are from. Tay opened his eyes. My grandmother's sword had markings too. She taught me some of them when I was young. The room became very still again. You can read the markings? Liz asked. Her light body flickered faster now. Only a few, Tay said. I was just a child. I forgot most of it, but I remember one symbol. It meant something like honor or courage. My grandmother made me practice drawing it. Val stood up quickly, his forearms moving in agitation. This is impossible. Those markings have been studied by linguists for thousands of cycles. No one has ever been able to understand them. Perhaps they were not asking the right people, Whisper suggested. His voice was soft and thoughtful. Neth hissed angrily. Are you suggesting that humans, one of the youngest species in the galaxy, somehow have knowledge that we do not? That is ridiculous. I am not suggesting anything, Whisper replied calmly. I am simply observing. Myra raised her webbed hand. May I speak? When everyone nodded, she continued. I have been quiet because I have been thinking. I study history. It is my specialty. And there is something strange about humans that I have noticed since they joined the council. What is that? Breck asked. Myra looked at Tay with her large blue eyes. Humans have a very long history for such a young species. Your recorded history goes back at least 5,000 of your years. Your archaeological records go back even further. We have found human artifacts that are 40,000 years old. Maybe older. That is not unusual, Drath said. Many species develop slowly before achieving space travel. Yes, Mira agreed. But most species lose their old artifacts over time. Wars destroy them. Natural disasters bury them. Time breaks them down. But humans seem to keep things. They seem to remember things. They have old buildings, old books, old tools, and apparently old swords. Tay thought about this. My grandmother always said that memory was the most important thing. She said we must never forget where we come from. A wise philosophy, Liz said. But it raises an important question. Where do humans come from? Tay blinked. From Earth. Everyone knows that. Yes, but where did you come from before Earth? Liz asked. Every species in the galaxy has origin stories. Creation myths. Tales of how they came to be. What are your stories? Tay felt uncomfortable again. This was not his area of expertise. He was a diplomat, not a historian or a religious scholar. But he tried to answer anyway. We have many stories, he said. Different cultures have different beliefs. Some say we were created by gods. Some say we evolved from earlier creatures. Some say we came from the stars. The stars? Vel repeated. Which stars? I do not know, Tay said. It is just a story. Many old cultures on Earth believed that our ancestors came from the sky, from distant places. They said that long ago, humans traveled between worlds. The silence that followed was different from before. It was not shocked silence. It was thoughtful silence. Every alien in the room was processing what Tay had said. Interesting, Whisper murmured. Very interesting. Drath's holographic image leaned forward. Human, I have made a decision. We will send a research team to your planet. We will examine your grandmother's sword. We will determine if it is truly as old as you suggest. Tay nodded. I will need to contact my grandmother first. She is old and does not like surprises. Of course, Drath said. We will wait for your communication. But understand, human, this is now an official council matter. If your grandmother's sword is as old as the blade of first light, or older, it will change everything we know about your species. And about the history of the galaxy, Myra added quietly. Tay swallowed hard. He had just wanted to make a simple comment. He had just wanted to share a memory. Now he was in the middle of something much bigger than he had ever expected. He thought about his grandmother Yuna, sitting in her small house in Korea, drinking tea and tending her garden. She had no idea what was coming. Tay hoped she would forgive him for bringing the entire galaxy to her door. I will call her tonight, he said. But I must warn you, my grandmother is a very stubborn woman. If she does not want to show you the sword, she will not show it. No one can force her. Vel's wings buzzed. She would refuse a request from the Galactic Council? Tay actually laughed at this. You do not know my grandmother. She once refused to move her house when the government wanted to build a road. They had to build the road around her. The council does not scare her. For the first time, some of the aliens looked uncertain. They had technology that could destroy planets. They had power that spanned the galaxy. But none of them had ever faced a stubborn Korean grandmother. Tay smiled. This might actually be fun to watch. The Galactic Heritage Museum floated in the empty space between 3 solar systems. It was the biggest museum in the known universe. Every species that joined the Galactic Council had to send their oldest and most important items here. It was a rule. It was a way to show respect. It was a way to prove that your people had history and culture. Tay walked slowly through the long white halls of the museum. He was a human man, 32 years old, with short black hair and tired eyes. He wore the simple gray uniform of an Earth diplomat. Behind him walked 5 alien representatives from different worlds. The first was Vel, a tall creature that looked like a giant insect. He had 4 arms, 2 large eyes, and thin wings on his back that he never used. Vel was the museum curator. He had worked here for 200 years. He was very proud of his job. The second was Myra, a short blue-skinned female from the water world of Delph. She had gills on her neck and webbed fingers. Her people had joined the council 5,000 years ago. The third was Gorn, a large rock-like being from the mining planets. He was heavy and slow, but very smart. His people were famous for their engineering skills. The fourth was Liz, a thin creature made of what looked like living light. She floated instead of walked. Her people were very old and very wise. They rarely spoke to younger species. The fifth was Breck, a furry mammal with 6 legs and a long tail. He was friendly and curious. His people had only joined the council 300 years ago. Tay was the newest member of this group. Humans had only made contact with the Galactic Council 2 years ago. Earth was still learning about the universe. The council had invited Tay to see the museum as a sign of welcome. "This way, please," Vel said in his clicking voice. The translator device in Tay's ear changed the clicks into words he could understand. "We are approaching the Hall of Origins. This is where we keep our most ancient treasures." The group walked through a large door made of some kind of crystal. Inside, the room was huge. The ceiling was so high that Tay could not see it. Floating platforms held different items under protective shields of light. "Each item here is older than 10,000 galactic cycles," Val explained proudly. "Only the most ancient artifacts are allowed in this room." Mira made a sound of approval. "The Hall of Origins is famous across all worlds. I have wanted to see it since I was a child." Gorn nodded his heavy head. "My ancestors helped build the shields that protect these items. It is an honor to see them working." Liz said nothing. She simply floated forward, her light body glowing softly. Breck bounced on his 6 legs with excitement. "What is the oldest thing here? I want to see it." Vel's wings twitched with pleasure. He loved when visitors asked this question. "Follow me. I will show you our greatest treasure." They walked to the center of the room. There, on a platform made of black stone, sat a sword. It was not a fancy sword. It was simple, made of some kind of bronze-colored metal. The blade was short and slightly curved. The handle was wrapped in old leather that had turned dark with age. "This," Val said with great respect in his voice, "is the blade of First Light. It is the oldest weapon in our collection. It is 12,000 galactic cycles old." Everyone except Tay gasped. Even Liz stopped floating and lowered herself to look more closely. 12,000 cycles, Myra whispered. "That is older than my entire civilization." "It was found on a dead world at the edge of the galaxy," Vel continued. "We do not know who made it or why. The species that created it is long gone. But their craft remains. Look at the metalwork. Look at the balance. Whoever made this was a true master." Gorn leaned forward, his stone eyes studying the blade. "The metal composition is strange. I have never seen anything like it." "That is because the technique to make this metal has been lost to time," Val said. "Our best scientists have tried to copy it. They have all failed." Breck's tail wagged slowly. "It is beautiful. So old. So mysterious." Tay stood at the back of the group. He looked at the sword with a strange expression on his face. His head tilted to one side. His eyes narrowed. He looked confused. "Is something wrong, human?" Liz asked. Her voice was like music, soft and flowing. It was the first time she had spoken directly to Tay. Everyone turned to look at him. Tay scratched the back of his head. He seemed uncomfortable with all the attention. "No, nothing is wrong. It is just... That sword looks familiar." Val's antennae stood straight up. "Familiar? How could it look familiar? This blade is unique in all the galaxy." "I know," Tay said slowly, "but I think I have seen one like it before. My grandmother has something similar." The room became very quiet. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Mira broke the silence first. "Your grandmother? A human elder?" Tay nodded. "Yes, her name is Yuna. She lives in a small town in Korea. That is a country on Earth. And she has a sword like this." Gorn asked. His voice was heavy with disbelief. Well, I have not seen it in many years, Tay admitted. But yes, I remember it. She kept it in a wooden box in her room. She said it was a family treasure. Very old. Vel walked closer to Tay, his forearms crossed over his chest. Human, do you understand what you are saying? This blade is 12,000 cycles old. Your species has only been traveling in space for less than 100 of your years. Your entire recorded history is only a few thousand years old. Tay shrugged. I am just telling you what I remember. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe my grandmother's sword is a copy. I do not know. But Liz was watching Tay very carefully. Her light flickered in strange patterns. You are not wrong, she said quietly. I can see it in your memory. You are telling the truth. Now, everyone stared at Liz. Her people had the ability to sense truth from lies. If she said Tay was honest, then he was honest. This is impossible, Vel said. His wings buzzed with agitation. Completely impossible. Tay looked at the sword again. He remembered sitting in his grandmother's room as a child. He remembered the old wooden box. He remembered her taking out the sword and showing it to him. She said it was from her graduation, Tay said softly. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Graduation? Breck asked. What is graduation? It is a human ceremony, Tay explained. When young people finish their education, they have a celebration. Sometimes they receive gifts. And your grandmother received an ancient sword as a graduation gift. Myra asked. Her voice was shaking slightly. That is what she told me, Tay said. She said it was a family tradition. The sword passes from generation to generation. Each person receives it when they graduate. Vel turned to look at the blade of first light. Then he turned back to Tay. His insect eyes were wide with something that might have been fear. Human, he said slowly. How old is your grandmother's sword? Tay thought about it. I do not know exactly, but she said it had been in our family for a very, very long time. Longer than anyone could remember. The silence that followed was the heaviest silence Tay had ever felt in his life.